Hello, everyone, and welcome to LabX's Before You Buy webinar series. My name is Mary Beth DiDonna, and I'll be moderating this discussion, Environmental Analysis Using Refurbished Equipment. We like our webinars to be very interactive, so we encourage you to submit your questions to us at any point during today's webinar. Our speaker will address these questions during the question and answer session following his presentation. To ask a question or make a comment, simply type your query into the Q&A box located on the right-hand side of your screen. We will try to address as many questions as possible during our time together. If we happen to run out of time, I will forward any unanswered questions to our speaker and he can respond to you directly if possible. I would like to remind you that this webinar recording will be available on demand shortly following this presentation, so please watch your emails for information from LabX on how to access this free video once it's available. I would especially like to thank GenTech Scientific for sponsoring this event. Their support allows LabX to keep these webinars free of charge for our readers. And now I would like to announce our presenter for this webinar, who will be introduced by his colleague, Yvette Pagano. Will Flannery is a service engineer with GenTech Scientific. He previously worked in the laboratory industry developing ICP methods for 5.5 years. Will has worked for GenTech Scientific for over 10 years, specializing in ICP OES, ICP MS, AA, LC-MS instrumentation. Will holds a BS in chemistry from Canisius College in Buffalo, New York. He enjoys going out and seeing what other labs are doing and learning about people's research, which is a great way to get a wide variety of research perspectives. When Will is not in the lab, he enjoys photography and skiing with his family. Will, thanks for joining us today. Yvette, please get us started.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Yvette Pagano, and I'm representing GenTech Scientific. We are here on this webinar to talk about environmental analysis. The theme, why buy new when you don't have to? And basically, we're going to take you through some examples, some methodology in the environmental analysis, and where older machines and methods can sometimes be better. So we're going to talk about that. And first, I want to introduce myself. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer here at GenTech. My education, business, so I studied marketing and international business at Penn State. Then I got my MBA from Pepperdine and came with 12 years of manufacturing experience. So very familiar with ISO and GMP, best manufacturing principles. I've served on numerous technology, manufacturing, and business incubator boards. I've worked with a lot of government officials on manufacturing issues. My passion outside of GenTech is in the cannabis and psychedelics industries, which GenTech does support, and I'm also an accredited investor in those spaces. And I currently reside in Rochester, New York with my husband and 2 daughters. So now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Will Flannery. Take it away, Will.
Hi, I'm Will Flannery. I've been with GenTech for about 10 and a half years now as a field service engineer specializing in LC-MS equipment. My background, I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Canisius College right here in Buffalo, New York. We were a small school, but we like to think that we had a great chemistry department. One of the nice things about going to a small school is I was able to get a lot of hands-on experience with instrumentation, have a lot of opportunities at the undergrad level that normally only would have been available to graduate students. After graduating from Canisius, I went out and worked in industry for 5.5 years developing ICP methodologies for a company that manufactured dielectric powders, polishing compounds, and things of that nature. Ended up hiring on with GenTech in 2012. Was originally hired to work on ICP, ICP-MS, and AA equipment, and moved into LC-MS, which I've been doing more or less my entire career with GenTech. One of the things I like about working for GenTech is I get to go out into the field and interact with customers, see what different labs are doing. You get to see some really interesting research that's going on out there. It's a fascinating opportunity. And when I'm not out in the field working in the lab, I enjoy doing photography, and I ski with my 2 boys.
Awesome. Okay, so now we want to tell you just a little bit about GenTech Scientific. We sell and service quality, refurbished analytical testing equipment. We have been around for 26 years, and we do sell worldwide and provide service in the U.S. and Canada. And our joke, or when trying to work with new customers, we say, listen, if we sold junk and didn't stand by our work, we wouldn't be around for 26 years. So we're very proud of that, and how many existing and repeat clients we have, as well as servicing all the major universities in the world. But again, in addition to selling it, we also offer training, service, and repair, which is why we're lucky to have a guy like Will on staff. So, Will, you want to talk a little bit more about that aspect of GenTech?
Well, one of the things that I've always said about GenTech is one of our greatest strengths is the fact that the same engineers who refurbish the equipment here in the shop are the engineers going out and doing the installing and the training, and that gives us a very deep understanding of how the equipment works. Another nice thing about our group is we have a wide array of engineers from a wide array of backgrounds, everything from chemists to electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, and everything in between. And that offers a lot of different perspectives on how the equipment works and how to facilitate repair.
Yeah, it's a great point. And because we have such a diversity of staff, we also are familiar and comfortable on all the major models, manufacturers, all the different OEM brands. So we specialize across the board in that. So Will, there's a rumor going around here that a brand new instrument is always the best for a lab. What do you feel about that, Will?
Well, my stock response to that is bogus.
False.
It's false. Right. Newer instruments, yes, they will do the job, and the manufacturers, they make new instruments. That's what they're going to put out there. They don't sell old instruments, they sell new instruments. And they're going to come out with application notes about how the latest and the greatest is going to be able to do this method that was developed 20, 30 years ago on, chances are, one of the manufacturer's older instruments. But those older instruments are still perfectly viable, perfectly capable of running that method, and they're able to continue to do that to this day.
Okay, and don't just take our word for it. Take a listen to some of GenTech's elite customers, Dr. Diana Aga, as well as Bill Fornoff from Clean Harbors.
When I first started, we get these startup grants. You have a certain amount of money and you say, I'm going to buy this instrument. So I bought an LCMS, and it had a service contract for 1 year or warranty. And after that, the service contract was unaffordable for me. And I just keep, fixing it until it died with the board.
Okay.
And it pretty much cost me almost $50,000 just fixing it. And then I actually talked to your company, and they said, we could sell you this used instrument and service it. And so I just sold my old instrument and got a used instrument, and it's still working until now because you just service it. It's like a service contract, so it's been now going on for 10 years.
14?
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
10 years this instrument's been running. I hope everybody caught that.
And actually, sometimes when I publish using, putting the brand, and they look at my publication like, this is a really old instrument, you're still running it? Yeah, it's still working.
Yeah, it's getting accurate results.
I have the
So.
sensitivity I need, it's still working. Why not?
Yes. That's what we're always trying to say. So
Yeah.
It's wonderful to hear. You've been, obviously, with your organization for a long time. You've been a GenTech customer for many years. You've been a great company to work with. Do you recall what led you to GenTech or some of your first engagements with our company?
Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning. The first instrument I bought from GenTech was 2003.
Woo!
That instrument's still running, and believe it or not, the computer for that instrument is still running. It has never really been turned off, so which is astounding for that matter. So I was trying to think about how it first came to GenTech, and I just can't get either I was referred to you all or sell parts for these instruments anymore. You should upgrade to brand new instruments. And I was thinking, no, that's not going to happen. And so the problem I was tasked with was how can I maintain these instruments and without the manufacturer supporting them. And so I looked for partners to help me in that regard, and GenTech was one of them for sure. Was great. And I used to call GenTech and say, hey, I need this, or I need something that'll do this or that. And you guys would be like, oh, okay, well, let me write this down. I'll get with the team, and I'll give you guys a call back. And that's what would happen. And so we had that kind of rapport. I really reached out to GenTech as a business partner and a dependable one to help me through problems.
Moving on to the next slide and trying to expound upon this a little bit, Will. So we've got sensitivity. That's what you're going to get increased if you buy a brand new instrument, and you're trading that off with robustness. So can you talk a little bit more in detail about the pros and cons, the what you're giving up and trading off with this sensitivity versus robustness scenario?
Well, often when I talk to customers, one of the things that comes up is sensitivity. And the way that you get more sensitivity is usually at the cost of robustness. In order to get more sensitivity, we have to get more sample coming into the instrument. And when we get more sample coming into the instrument, we also get more other stuff that's in the matrix coming into the instrument. And that's got to land somewhere. It's going to land on those front-end mass optics. It's going to, clutter them up, and you're going to eventually have, maintenance issues that you have to deal with. So one of the trade-offs in sensitivity is, yes, you get higher sensitivity, you get better instrument detection limits, but typically you're doing more maintenance more frequently to clean out all that other stuff that's going into the instrument. It also takes time to learn the new instrument software revisions and all that. If you've got a lab that's running older equipment and you want to expand on that, sometimes it's a lot easier just to buy more of that older equipment than it is to buy the latest and the greatest, which might work differently, cause more issues for the analysts.
And then I was just thinking, if you're a lab and you've got an instrument and you've got a method developed, then purchasing that same instrument, older instrument, is probably a huge advantage, right? Because you don't need to recreate anything; you're just duplicating what you already have.
Yeah, you would take the method that you're using on the current instrument, transition that over to the new refurbished instrument that you've purchased, run through your testing to make sure everything is coming out as it should be. No method, just, there's no true turnkey, put the quarter in, get a result transition. There's always a bit of work involved, but typically it's going to be less of an uphill battle when you're going to the same instrument rather than a brand new one, which might be radically different.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. And we talked about, again, this is for environmental, and that really they're testing these specifically dirty matrices. So that's really sometimes a brand new instrument could almost detect something that you're not even looking for. Is that right?
Right. That higher sensitivity is going to be higher sensitivity on everything. So not just the things you want to see, but the things you don't want to see. And by letting more sample enter into the instrument, you've got more stuff going in there. It's going to build up, and on those newer instruments, it's going to build up a lot faster than it will on the older ones.
Interesting. Okay, taking a look at the next slide, this was a pretty specific example. So this is a PFAS analysis, and we pulled a specific EPA method. It's 537.1. Will, can you expound a little bit on this method and what you found is the best instruments to replicate this?
So this became all the rage a few years ago, and you're seeing a lot in the media about it, which is increasing the awareness of these compounds, and thus you have more labs that are looking to test for them. I've seen a wide range of instruments being employed to do this method. And I had a lot of customers who were asking questions about that, asking our sales folks questions about that. So I sat down and did some research and came up with methods that I feel should be adequate to perform this method. So depending on what manufacturer you're interested, you're looking at the TSQ series from Thermo, anything from an Access Max to TSQ Quantum Ultra, up to the Vantage, and even the next generation TSQ Endura would be perfectly capable of running this method. On the Agilent side, the 6430 would be good at your lower end, but also the 6460 and the 6490. For waters, we have the Quattro Premier XE, the TQD, The Zevo TQMSs and the Zevo TQS should be able to do it. SciX, anything from the 3500 all the way up to the 6500, and the good old Shimadzu 8050 all should be capable of running this method. Really, you just need a decent LC on the front end and a triple quad mass spec that's capable of running that type of sample.
Okay. Yeah, it's nice that there's all these different OEM brands that would all work. So really, when you're talking to clients, it's more what they're familiar with, what software they like, or what other instruments of that type they have in their lab, or how do you guide someone when they're trying to figure this out?
Yeah, a lot of it typically comes down to personal preference of the operators in the lab. If you're in a shop that's mostly running Agilent equipment, you're going to recommend an Agilent instrument for that. If they're running mostly thermo equipment, you'd recommend a thermo instrument. It's just a lot easier for the operators when they stick to one particular brand.
That makes sense. Okay, so taking a look at our next slide here, this is one where we're talking about detecting major classes of persistent organic pollutants. And again, this is an older machine here, but this is a pretty important research. What comments do you have about this, Will?
Well, the method that we looked at here was the EPA application 8280B, which calls for a high resolution GC with a low resolution mass spectrometer. So an Agilent 5975 MSD on a 7890 would be perfect. You could probably also go back into the 6890 with a comparable MSD and still do the job. The methods were, developed with those types of equipment in mind. The manufacturers are pushing, the newer triple quads, and yeah, you might get better sensitivity on a triple quad just because of how a triple quad works. But these single quad instruments, at the end of the day, are still going to do the job just fine.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is the manufacturer is probably going to push a triple quad, but in your experience and working with these labs and seeing people out in the field, it's a nice to have, but you can certainly perform this all day with just a GCMS.
That's right.
Okay, good to know. Okay, so next, this is again talking about environmental samples using an ICP-MS. And this is something, that we hear a lot. Flint, obviously, was a big thing, but this is lead in drinking water. So can you speak a little bit more about this specific application?
Testing for inorganics in drinking water, but also surface water is important for a variety of reasons. And there's been a lot of work that's gone on in this particular field for a long time. The old way of doing it was to run just a flame AA, but that was ultimately replaced by the ICP OES, which we're finding is now being replaced by the ICP-MS. The nice thing about the ICP-MS is it tends to be quite a bit more sensitive, less prone to the matrix effects than the older OES instruments were. That's not to say that an OES isn't capable of doing it, it just might be a little bit easier on an ICP-MS. But again, we're talking about techniques that are, in some cases, 30 years old. And were written for older instruments. So, even an ICP that's only 10, 15 years, or ICP-MS rather, that's 10, 15 years old is still able to do the job just fine. You'll find these instruments out in water labs across the country doing this kind of work. Yep,
so you've seen these in the field performing very well in the different water labs. Okay, cool. All right, next we're talking about the carbon DNPH derivatives in indoor and in-car air. Again, a pretty relevant topic. Can you kind of give a little background on why this has been important to people lately and then what you've seen out in the field?
I don't have much background on that one. The method that is being referenced in this case is EPA 3115A. And the requirements on that are pretty basic. They're looking for a flow rate of 1.5 mils per minute, 20 microliter loop. They call out a specific column for that type of analyses as well. Manufacturers are, of course, pushing the UPLCs. They're able to operate at a higher pressure. They're able to run faster. But this method was really developed on old HPLC technology. So you can go up with a UPLC and you might get some higher throughput as a result from that. But even an Agilent 1200, 1100, will do just fine for this type of analysis.
So really, I think what you said is really important. So this method was developed for an HPLC. That's how the method was developed, validated, and is running. And so now the manufacturers are pushing a UPLC.
Yep.
And again, it's a nice to have. But this method was written, validated, and is running on an HPLC. And as far as we're concerned, that's perfectly sufficient to do.
Yeah, the older equipment will certainly do the job, and it really depends on what you're trying to do and what the particular needs of your labs are. You might have, even better sensitivity if you added, say, a mass spec detector to it, which was able to dial down on those masses and give you an even cleaner signal.
Good point. Okay, that concludes our review of the slides, but our contact information is here. We're going to move into a Q&A, but we really pride ourselves at GenTech on, our sales and our service. And so we're always available, put you in touch with somebody like Will when you're doing your quote, to determine, what is the actual perfect instrument for you and what you're doing. And we love to work with clients in that way. So don't be afraid to reach out to us, sales, service. We are here to answer all your questions and meet your needs. So with that, we're going to move into our Q&A with Will.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Will, and thank you also to Yvette. Thank you for a great presentation. So at this point, we are going to move into our question and answer session with the audience. Again, for those of you who may have joined us late, you can send in your questions or comments by typing them into the Q&A box located on the right-hand side of your screen. A reminder that if you leave a question or comment, we will have a record of your name and email address. So even if you don't have a question at this time, please feel free to enter a comment in the Q&A box, and we will make sure that the GenTech team receives that and they can reach out to you offline. So, and as a reminder, we'll try to address as many questions as possible as we have time for. If we run out of time, I will forward any unanswered questions to our speaker, and he can respond to you directly if possible. So, Will, thanks again for a great presentation. Let's get started with some of the questions here from the audience. This first one says, does GenTech service other industries, not just environmental?
Yes, we do service a wide range of industries. We've got everything from the environmental that we alluded to. We have a lot of instruments that are out in academia, contract labs, toxicology labs, folks working in agriculture, the cannabis industry. So it's a wide range of customers that we service and support.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. I did receive a message from someone asking if this video will be available on demand later so they can watch it again. And the answer is yes, it will be made available on demand shortly following this presentation. So please just keep an eye on your email address, and LabX will email you once that video is available. You can also go to labx.com and under our webinars tab, and the archived webinar will be available there for you to watch again. And that is free. You just need to sign up. And if you're already signed up, you'll get the email with how you can view it again. Will, we have one more question here that says, what kind of service and support can I expect from GenTech after the sale?
So one of the things that GenTech has always offered with the instruments is, we have lifetime phone support of the instrument. So whether you've bought that instrument from us last week, last year, 10 years ago, you can still call into the shop. You can still ask for help. We don't have a threshold to pick up the phone like some other companies do. We also have a variety of services that we provide after the sale. After the warranty period has ended, we have service contract options available. We have preventative maintenance options available. So we offer a wide range of support to our customers after the sale.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. I don't know if there's any kind of closing message you want to give here before we close for the day.
I think you just say that even if you didn't buy it from us, we'll still service it.
Yvette has mentioned we do service equipment that we did not sell. So if you have equipment in the lab that you bought from somebody else, a number of our customers over the years have come to us because they've had an instrument from the manufacturer. The manufacturer no longer supports that piece of equipment. They need help. They pick up the phone, they call GenTech, and oftentimes we're able to help them out. We support these instruments long after the manufacturers stop supporting them. We take a great deal of pride in that. That some of this equipment, we're one of the few people who can still provide support for it.
All right, wonderful. Thanks so much. So that does bring us to the end of our webinar. And just a reminder that this webinar will be available on demand shortly following this presentation. So on behalf of LabX, I'd like to thank Will Flannery for all the hard work he put into his presentation. And I'd like to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. Once again, I would like to thank our webinar sponsor, GenTech Scientific, for their support. Their support allows LabX to offer these webinars free of charge to our readers. For more information on all of our upcoming or on-demand webinars, or to learn more about the sale and purchasing process for scientific, process, electronic testing, and medical equipment, please visit our website at labx.com. We hope you can join us again. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.